Welcome to the D6 Family Ministry Podcast, a place where ideas, principles, and personalities come together to give you a ministry advantage that empowers the church and home.
I don't know anything more important in our society or in the kingdom of God than to help the church, help the family.
Discipleship is not an event, it's a way of life.
And one day it just hit me that discipleship at home was not about doing more. It was about inviting Christ into what we were already doing.
The goal of family ministry is not families sitting on the couch holding hands and singing Kumbaya. The ultimate goal is families that love God, love people, and make disciples of all peoples.
So that's why you're here. You're here to say 1 hour a week, as significant and as awesome as it is, we know that it's not enough and we want to be intentional with every hour.
You're listening to the D6 Podcast. Here are your hosts, Marianne Howard, Ron Hunter, and Josh Wooten.
Well, I am very excited about our guest today. He's a friend of ours and Michael Bayne. And if you know Michael Bayne and you follow Michael Bayne, he loves his big green egg. Okay. This guy smokes everything in his big green egg. And I'm always so inspired by, this is one of his hobbies and it's so great. And the three of us have often shared recipes and talked about smoking meat. It's a thing. And so guys, I just wanted to ask you before we dive into Michael, what has been your favorite thing to make on your smoker?
Oh, goodness gracious, all of it. I blame partially Michael Bayne for he's just one of the many leaders that I follow that would often not so subtly flex their green egg on social media, like Carrie Newhoff and Michael Bayne are just a couple of the people that I see with. And I finally made the plunge and bought a green egg. So my wife can thank you and blame you all at the same time, Mr. Bayne. But I love to cook. I know it sounds very plain, but chicken just tastes different when you smoke it low on the green egg. Like, it is amazing. And tenderloin. Probably my favorite thing that I cook is smoked tenderloin on the green egg.
Wow. Well, I'm going to give you two oddities that you're going to turn your nose up at, but I will say I'm new to the smoking meats. I've had mine about 6 months and I'm still learning. So I've got a lot to learn and I keep trying to learn. But there's two things that I've done that I really love. And I love other items as well, but I'm still kind of honing that craft and will be for a long time. But I love smoked bologna. That may be odd, but I'll go to my meat department area and ask for, about a pound of smoked bologna, score that puppy. I'll soak it into my favorite barbecue sauce marinade. And then I'll put it on the grill. And once it's done, it goes quick because it's already cooked. So you're just imparting that flavor of smoke into it. You can cut it up in cubes and serve it as hors d'oeuvres or any way you want to. It's really, really good. And here's the other oddity. I like getting really thick cut smoked bacon, preferably Smithfield's on that, but you can do any one of them. Wright's, Smithfield's, either one of those are great bacon choices. Throw it on the grill and smoke it to your preference of crispness. And it just is doubly good when you smoke smoked bacon.
Wow.
And they sound really weird, but that's my two favorites that I think I do well. I'm still learning to do the others well.
Well, now that you guys have left my mouth watering for more food, you guys are going to love this interview today. And I'm going to tell you, in the smoking world, there is a tagline that is low and slow. Keep your heat low and you cook it slow. And I will tell you today, Michael Bayne is smoking some meat, figuratively. He really is cooking with truth today. And you guys are going to be so blessed. I will prepare you. You need your Post-it notes. You need a notepad. You need your digital, whatever it is that you do to take notes. This guy just speaks gold. Leadership gold. You are going to be challenged. You are going to be inspired. He's going to stop you in your tracks because he stopped me in mine as I listened to this interview. This is really good. So I just want you to buckle up and get ready for just an incredible, practical, tangible, encouraging interview on family ministry and leadership. So
all
we're
aboard the Bayne train, everybody.
That's right. That's right. So we're going to listen to Michael Bayne, and we will come back in just a minute.
Did you know that because of D6 Heroes, Randall House and D6 Family are able to equip families far and wide in the area of generational discipleship? Due to the financial gifts of both individuals and churches, D6 curriculum has been translated into multiple languages and distributed across the globe, including restricted access countries for use in the underground church. In short, because of the financial gifts of individuals like you, moms and dads all over the world can pass their faith to the next generation of believers. Would you consider becoming a D6 hero? A D6 hero is an individual who invests their financial resources in the ministry of Randall House and D6 Family to ensure that believers can transfer their faith through the church and home. Please visit d6hero.com to join the ranks of our heroes and to explore other areas where your financial investment can have an impact.
Michael Bayne is the founding pastor of Greenville Community Church in Greenville, South Carolina, and has been serving churches in Tennessee, South Carolina, Virginia, and Kentucky for the past 20 years. He is passionate about his family, cooking on the Big Green Egg, and Tennessee football. Michael is dedicated to helping leaders innovate in their church settings and see family discipleship as a priority. And he also works on the D6 Plus team, which is a very excellent product.
It's
Michael,
so
thanks for
fun.
being here.
Hey, thanks for having me. Oh, I'm so glad to be here.
Which you are no stranger to D6. You're no stranger to this stage. I mean, you have done this before.
Yes,
I'm a little intimidated, actually.
It's so much fun.
No,
it's so much fun to be on this side of it.
I've got to try to live up to your expectations. Like, you have set the bar high, and I'm like, okay, I got to come in and
we're going to have fun.
Well, I appreciate you being here because we're talking about a topic that's something that we get asked about a lot. It's something that a lot of people are just asking because it's one of those, I believe it, I don't know what to do. And that's leading your church toward family discipleship. I think it's probably safe to assume that anyone who's listening to this podcast right now believes in family ministry, but it's not always easy to get the rest of the church to buy in. What are some of the biggest challenges that church staffs are facing when they're trying to implement family discipleship?
Well, some of these, the audience is going to understand this. I'm going to say this, and they're going to know, yep. So the first thing that we see right now is just the pace of our culture. We are busier than ever. I think it's even funny that even in the middle of a pandemic, people were still busy. Zoom, this class, online class. So busyness. One of the other things that we see that kind of impacts family discipleship is just, I like to call it lack of consistent engagement from the family to church. So like everybody knows this, like you see this, everybody who works in a ministry position knows that people are engaging at church on a less frequent basis. But they may be connecting digitally in another way, but being there present physically, or seeing lower rates of people engaging, within the body, the spiritual family. And then the other hindrance that keeps the church from moving toward it is a common one. Again, just a reminder, it's silo ministry, where each ministry, groups ministry, student ministry, children's ministry, preschool ministry, are all just fighting for their own deal. So they just want to have successful ministries. And in the middle of that, they add to the busyness of the family schedule. So then there's not as much an opportunity for the church to move toward family discipleship where there's no partnership, no cooperation,
Yeah. One thing, and this is kind of like I guess we're starting off with like frequently asked questions, but one of the things that often comes up is people say, we're getting buy-in from our ministry leaders. We're getting buy-in from our families. Our senior pastor, however, not necessarily on board. It may be, I don't believe in that, or it may be, hey, that's fine. That's your ministry. And you kind of mentioned the silo thing. That is a separate thing.
I'm busy.
Yeah. How important is it for that senior pastor to be on board? Is it like a make or break issue with this?
Well, I thought about this. This is such a great question. Is it a make or break issue? Let's start there, because I think let me just say this. No. So, like, if you're in a church where your pastor is overwhelmed, your senior leadership team, even elders, pastors, deacons, whoever, your senior leaders are like, hey, we're busy, you do your thing. Like, we love you, do your thing. Is it a make or break issue? No, but here's what we know. It is very, very important. You'll move forward quicker if the senior leader buys in and casts vision. Because why? We all know this. The church will embrace what senior leaders cast vision for and talk about and embrace themselves. And I get on it's different being in this seat because I've been in the family pastor seat. I've been a middle school minister. I've been a children's pastor. Then I've been an executive pastor and a senior pastor. So I'm now sitting in the seat looking back. And if we move forward more quickly when I echo what is happening generationally with the next gen team. That's just all there is to it. So it really does, it does help. But a lot of leaders, they're in that boat where their senior pastor is just not on board yet. They're not there yet.
Yeah, and I don't mean to pick a scab with this, but when you're saying this, it actually made me think, you being a Tennessee fan, when you look at college football programs, the coaches that are in and out the door constantly are usually programs that are not very successful.
As a Tennessee fan, I am very accustomed to this. Yeah. I understand this. And I think, one of the things that we were talking before we started was like, well, how do we get there? Mm-hmm. Like, what do you do? And that's been one of the interesting things sitting on this side of it. One of the things that I know is, so if your senior leader is not on board, here's the thing. The key aspect, number one, you got to be honoring in how you communicate this message. So dishonor will get you nowhere. You've got to lean into that senior leader with honor. Like, hey, I understand your position, authority, and then you've got to this is a spiritual battle because the enemy does not want anybody's church to focus on family discipleship. Yeah. So this is a matter of prayer. Like, how are we going to pray for that senior leader to catch the vision? And then, you almost, if your senior leader's not on board yet, you've got to gather a team and you've got to show him some fruits of the labor. And I always say excellence, like senior leaders love to go, I see that, or there is this need in the church, or maybe I should rethink it. I would hate for somebody to listen to this and be like, oh man, my senior leader's not on me, or they come to D6, or they come to any conference and championing family ministry and think, when I go home, I can't do any of this. You can, but if your senior leader's not on board, you just got to be more strategic and ready to focus, I think, even harder, because it's a challenge.
I really like that message because that's a hopeful message that you just shared, because we hear that a lot from people that say, yeah, I'm all about this, but when I go home, I don't have that support. And it's easy just to be deflated and think, okay, yeah, I just came to this conference, got pumped up, but it doesn't matter. I had a fun 3 days, and that's going to be it. But I like what you're sharing, because that is a message of hope out there. And it's not going behind your pastor's back. No. It's not trying to undermine their authority. It is basically showing them in a servant role that this can happen and this can work and this is what is needed. It is a biblical principle.
We tell this to people all the time. Like, so if your senior leader's not on board yet, one of the things he wants to know is, are you doing what we hired you to do first? Mm. So it's like, you got to make sure and handle your business and lead into it with excellence, and then create margin for this. So that's the honoring part of that senior leader, is like, they need to know that you're going to do you're taking care of leading this ministry with passion, and you're caring for what they value. And so as you do that, you're going to get more opportunity of that leader to trust you to move in some other, we've all seen that, like earn trust and lean into that over time. It will come, because that's how busy, driven leaders sometimes they need to know, like, you're going to do your job.
Yeah. And I love that you said, if your senior pastor isn't on board yet. And again, another hopeful message there that I think is important, that people don't get discouraged, because that word yet is a very big word there. And like you said, you do what you're supposed to do, and things may happen. That's very good. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to jump into the home aspect of this and what that looks like.
We all need a reset from time to time. When disruption comes, the shock, confusion, and stress can often cause leaders to misjudge priorities. Coming out of a crisis requires us to evaluate what has changed and what we should do to move forward. That's why we chose the theme Reset for the upcoming D6 conference. We want to help you not only value the past, but also look forward, and equally important, take the time to properly evaluate without making hasty predictions. In a culture marked by generational challenges and conflicts, ministry leaders, parents, and volunteers need solid resources to help them navigate a complex and ever-changing terrain. Whether you're a parent or a leader or both, at the 2022 D6 Conference, you'll have the opportunity to plan your discipleship strategy and be equipped and empowered with invaluable tools and resources. Join us April 20th through the 22nd in Orlando, Florida, as we come together to reset, refocus, and reconnect as ministry leaders, parents, and volunteers. The D6 Conference is the family ministry conference for your entire team. Register today and save at d6conference.com.
We are back with Michael Bayne, and we are talking some nuts and bolts about leading your family and your church toward discipleship. We've talked about some difficult questions here, and Michael has really shared just some great wisdom and expertise. And we're going to jump into the home for a second. And often we hear parents say, I love this idea, but I don't know how to do it. What advice would you offer to the parent who just feels lost, but really loves this idea and wants to take part?
Yeah, I would say, and literally I've said this I say this to parents a lot. And when it comes to issues, anything spiritual, I think parents feel so intimidated. And so what I challenge them with is anything you do for the first time is intimidating, regardless. So I'll think back, and I remember the first time pre-YouTube. So when we've had this huge advantage, we can watch videos of things now. But I remember as a teenager changing the oil in my truck for the first time. I had instructions, but that first time was really, really intimidating. And guess what? It's not intimidating. Even now, it's not intimidating. I could do it. I don't do it. I still pay that guy to get into the car and do it for convenience now. But I'm not intimidated by it. I know how to do that. And I think, so when I'm coaching parents, and again, all of us in whatever role, senior pastor, student pastor, family pastor, we're all coaches. So when you're coaching them, you start with what you would, just like if you were coaching an athletic team, you're going to make sure that you start small. So you lean into, what do you feel comfortable with? Start small. Secondly, just like with anything else, if you're the parent, be consistent, because that's not showing up. Showing up is the most important aspect of this. And then the other thing that I try to coach, especially dads, don't fake it, be real.
That's good.
Because dads get really nervous. If a dude is not confident in the material, he will naturally withdraw. And so I tell dads, no, just be real and be yeah, I'm kind of nervous. But let's talk about this and just see what happens. So the idea when it comes to spiritual conversations, fake it till you make it is the enemy. That may work in a lot of places. Forget that. Don't fake it. Just do it. Be consistent and be really real. Be authentic and be yourself, because our kids can smell it when they can tell when we're not really, we're trying to kind of fake our way through it.
I love that. That's really good. Well, let's talk some nuts and bolts for the church.
Yeah.
Let's say a church wants to make the leap and they want to jump into family discipleship.
Yeah.
What's the best place to start?
Well, I'm not going to give you the whole thing. So this is what's fun. I get to talk about this, but I will say this. I wrote down a few things we're going to talk about later in the conference. The first thing I tell, if you want to start this, you want to move toward family discipleship, the first place to start is with evaluation and prayer. It's great to come here. It's great to learn from other leaders. It's great to hear programs and strategies. And there's all kinds of, if you go to the expo hall, there's all kinds of ministries to help you. the worst thing you can do is just rush into a program. Your church, you evaluate where you're at, what are you good at, what do you need in your church. The second thing is, and I think this is really important, gather a team. So like before you start rolling it out, if you're sitting in a seat and you're the children's pastor and you're passionate about this, build the team before you implement anything. Other ministry leaders, so get a group leader in on it. Get somebody from adult ministry. Get the student lead. Gather some key leaders, build the team, and get input before you roll out your plan. A lot of guys listen to this podcast. They're funny. They're driven. They've already got they've got it all figured out. They don't want anybody's input. But you won't get buy-in church-wise until you have a team working on it together. Then after you have a team, I just encourage people to build like a very unique strategy, meaning your church is not my church. And what works at my church might not work at your church. And things that you've done in the past may not work. You got to build a unique strategy. And then, just like with parents, we tell parents to be consistent. Please, ministry leaders, please be consistent. You cannot keep changing. You can't keep changing everything and expect your parents to get it. Takes them a while to jump on.
Wow, yeah.
Get the full lesson. Listen, come subscribe. Get the whole thing.
Yeah, I kind of wish we were streaming this live so we could like take social media questions because I know people are like,
it would be so
I want to
much
ask
fun.
him something right now, and maybe you just email your questions, what you're thinking right now. We'll come back to it, in the future. But you've been in different states, you've been in different cultures implementing this. What are some hiccups that we can anticipate that may happen when we start trying to implement this family discipleship plan?
This is from my experience. Some things are just not going to work. And I think leaders just get they get really frustrated when it doesn't go like they think. When you find out none of your parents are listening to that podcast you're creating. When you find out, they're not using the take-home resources. They're not having, and you just get so frustrated. Mm-hmm. And so I would say some things are not going to work. Some things just take more coaching and time. Mm. So you've got to let those roots grow. But here's one of the things that I really believe, and it's this. Be firm with the vision, but be flexible with the program. So we can call strategy just a cool word for a program. You know what I mean? Like we air that. What's your strategy? Because program, we don't like to say we have a program. But man, if you're going to build a discipleship culture, you're going to have some programmatic elements. Mm-hmm. Some that are organic in nature. But let's be honest. Organic is just another name for chaotic. Sounds cool, but it doesn't take anybody anywhere. So you got to be firm with the vision, the why, your why. Like you got to be ready to hold on to that, never let it go. But you've really got to be flexible and get parents in at different levels. That's the one thing I see too, the mistakes, is it's for the family discipleships, it's one way or nothing. And that doesn't work anywhere else. There's levels of engagement. Mm-hmm. Just look at what happens, any social media platform. There are levels of engagement. You can go really deep into it, or you can just kind of pop in and check your Facebook. But there are multiple layers and tools in there. And so, I just think you got to get them in at those systems and just know, you're going to have to make some changes.
Yeah.
Regardless.
Well, I want to end jumping back to the parent side of this because you said that thing about we can't fake it till we make it.
Yes.
That's going to cause problems, and that is sticking with me right now.
Yeah.
What advice would you offer to the parents who are on board with this, but we hear this all the time. It's so awkward. It's so uncomfortable. I'm pulling my family down here and saying, let's have a Bible study together for 45 minutes. And my kids are like, ugh, cringeworthy. What do you tell those parents?
Yeah. The Chelsea and I, my wife and I, what we try to do is we have found that meaningful things sometimes can be awkward. Here's one example. Like, if you've ever been in a retreat center and if you've been to a retreat and especially a leadership retreat, and you're going to have a time where you wash someone's feet. Well, let me just tell you, that is awkward and meaningful. How do we get around that moment? We speak to the awkwardness. That's what every time. What do? We go, okay, this is going to weird you out. And I would say to the parent that goes, it just feels so awkward. Speak to the awkwardness. Let your kids laugh. Let your kids even make fun of it. Like, it's okay. Let them because they don't know what to deal with that anxiety. And so let them speak to it. Let them pick at it. Everybody laugh and then move back in. Don't let, my advice to parents, if you're listening, and to ministry leaders as you coach as parents, is encourage them to speak to it and then just keep it going. Keep moving in it.
That's really good. And I really feel like we're going to get some emails. We're going to have to do like a part 2 at some point with listener emails, because you've broken down so many things here about how this happens. I know there's so many frustrated people that are hearing this and going, thank you. You've finally given me some ideas. You've given me some relief. You've given me some hope. And so, Michael, I thank you for sharing this. This is a message that people need to hear. You have just thrown practicality at everything that people are doing and trying to do. So thank you so much for doing this. Thank you for sharing this. And we'll have to do this again sometime and get the rest of the questions. So
yeah, let's go.
I appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Wow, that one really hit home for me as someone who has recently helped to lead a church into the family ministry movement. I wish I could have heard this podcast years ago before I jumped into the water.
So
to save me a little bit of heartache, but hopefully it will help somebody on the other end of this. When he talks about buy-in from the senior pastor, there's so many practical gold nuggets there. What I love, because it's like, I love to talk strategy, but he says, one of the things you can do is, and I highly recommend, very simple. It sounds simple, but sometimes it's ready, fire, aim. But he's very tactful in the way that he says, you need to build your team before you implement, really lay out your needs. And I think what another thing that really just stuck out to me is when he was talking about dads, speaking to the awkwardness and just being real. And it's okay to not have all the answers, and I just think that is very, very powerful, something that we needed to be reminded of.
I want to jump in here because I want to give a clarifying area, and I'm not sure which way Michael would go with this. And I wished he were on right now with us to have this conversation, because he might say, Ron, no. But, when you talk about building your team before implementing, I want to clarify one item I would strongly, and this is what I do with, consulting and working with churches, get your guiding philosophy clear in your mind if you don't yet have your team, and you build your team around the philosophy. I know pastors who don't really have a guiding philosophy, and they just go out and hire high quality, high capacity talent. And what you do then is you've built 5 or 6 different kingdoms inside your church because you don't have a cohesive direction. Mm-hmm. So my one pushback in there is really get down, hey, am I a family generational discipleship church? If so, when you hire, you want somebody to come in willing to work towards that end, not building a great children's ministry, or building a great student ministry, or whatever that is in there. So I would say argue to get down your strategy. Now, if you already have your team, it's hard to make that change. Mm-hmm. But that's where you're going to have to sit down, like he's talking about, going, hey, let's examine the parents. That overwhelmingness. I love this about it. The first time, you change the oil, you're like, it's intimidating. I'm worried I'm going to blow up my car. That's how new believers feel in Christianity, trying to engage their kids in discipleship for the first time. What do you think about all that, Marianne? Well, you're part of team. You've seen your husband coordinate teams, put them together. That's his role now.
Yes. his title is actually the pastor of ministry strategy, and it fits him. And Ron and I have talked about that with him. It's such a great title because that's so him, but it's also such a beautiful calling to make sure that every member of the team is fulfilling strategy. And I think I'm in agreement with you. I know I'm in agreement with you, Ron, in that you've got to be really shored up on your strategy, because you've got to get your team on board with strategy to implement, I think. If there's any loopholes in the strategy or there's any cracks in the strategy, it's going to be hard to get buy-in. And so I'm very much with you. I really liked his paradigm, and I wanted to talk about this for just a minute with implementation with senior leadership. And he talked about be honoring in how you communicate. Dishonor will get you nowhere. He said it plain. And then he said, change will not happen without trust. It's gold, you guys. And I just want to encourage, regardless of where you are, if you're a ministry leader, if you're working in the professional business world, and you feel like you're going up against the current of change, like you feel like you've got a clear vision from God about change, but it's not moving, I would just call our audience, because it really stopped me in my tracks to sit before the Lord and ask God, am I being honoring? Am I being honoring in my heart to my leadership? And am I working to build trust with my leadership? Because that is so good. That is so vital. The thing I love about the book of Nehemiah is set up to be a cupbearer to the king. He is a servant who is he's built so much trust with the king, you guys, that he's literally willing to give up his life by tasting whatever comes the king's way first. And I just think it's a call to humility and for all of us to pause and evaluate our relationship with our senior leadership to make sure we're really honoring them, not just on the surface, but in our hearts, because that's what's real. And number one, but number two, that you're working and you have good work ethic to the point where your senior leadership trusts the work that you're doing, so they can see, you know what, I want to hear what they have to say because I trust their work ethic.
That was so key, the way he shaped that. He said, you know what, if your pastor's not bought into family ministry, but you want your pastor to be, and you're in student or children or any other area, he said it this way. He said, do what you are hired first, and then lean into the extras. Because Marianne, you're spot on. If you're killing it in what the pastor wants to have happen, he knows how high capacity you are. And when you say, hey, I can handle one more thing, or I think we should tackle this, if you're already getting wins, he wants to see those wins across the board. You'll have earned credibility, change in your pocket that you can spend right there when that happens. Josh, how have you seen this unfold in staffs that are on different pages?
Well, I believe, it's like Marianne said, it starts with the heart. We have to realize that, especially in our role, if you are a children's student, family pastor, whatever, realize that your pastor is God's man and he is who he put in that role. And you have to be there to help serve the vision that God has put on his heart, and honor, affirm, and validate them and their gifts, and find ways that you can plug them in to where you would like to see, your area of ministry or family ministry go, and how they fit into that, that it's not in a threatening way, that you're not trying to take anything. You're trying to pitch the vision of adding value to what his vision is and what the vision of the church is. I think it's very important, but it can't just be lip service. It has to be real and authentic, and you have to be able to walk side by side in that vision.
Yeah, another, I don't want to use the word gold one more time, so I'm going to call this one platinum, okay? Another platinum platitude that he gave us was that be firm in vision and strategy, but flexible with your program. Yeah. I've seen so many people so hard and fast on program. You know what? If you sit there and say, you know what, we got great programs, your programs define what your vision and your strategy is, or your philosophy. And so don't claim, hey, this is one way or the other. I know we just got through Christmas, but I would liken it to this. If Santa said, hey, let's call out all the reindeer, and he hooked them all up to separate reins pointing different directions around the sleigh to where one's heading towards 3 o'clock, one's heading towards 9 o'clock, another's heading towards noon, one's heading towards 6. That's what most of our church ministries look like. They might be great at pulling, but that sleigh's going nowhere unless you team them together to go in a certain direction. And that's what your program should do, is pull you towards your strategy.
That's right.
And that will get you somewhere. I love that about him.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I do think there are certain podcasts that are worth listening to twice. And I think Michael's wisdom is one that you probably should look at your notes, think on it, marinate it. Let's just kind of go back to our cooking theme here. Put that in your marinade, let it just sit overnight, and then come back and listen to this thing again and see what else you get, or the clarity you get from hearing it a second time through. I think it will be super helpful for you. Next week, we're going to be interviewing Miss Lydia Randall, no stranger to our podcast at all. But boy, has she got some action-packed areas for us to take in and begin to implement. Until then, we're going to be praying for you. We're going to be praying for your strategy. We're going to be praying for how that strategy is lived out in so many different ways. And we are so thankful that you've tuned in and you've listened to this podcast. Please be willing to share it with others on your team. We look forward to seeing you next week.
You've been listening to the D6 Podcast. You can learn more about D6 at d6family.com.